Okay. Oh, and I'm going to mute everybody as well. Hold on.
We
And and John, you want to unmute yourself?
Good evening, and welcome to the bonus edition of this month's Poetry Playhouse open mic series. Bonus because we have two open mics this month. Tonight, featuring the Central Avenue Then and Now anthology, edited by Merimee, Moffitt, and Dale Harris, and book designed by Esther Vesky. And next week, next Tuesday, the Glissando anthology, connected to the New Mexico State Poetry Society, edited by Zachary Klugman. So I think we have two exciting nights ahead. And thanks for joining us this week, and hopefully you'll be back next week. So I wanted to spend a few minutes before we get started having a little conversation with the editors of the Central Avenue Then and Now anthology, Dale and Merimee. So Jules, if you could spotlight them. And yeah, I see Dale, I don't see Merimee yet. So this anthology, oh, here she is. This anthology is, I think, a really interesting concept. It looks back at the Albuquerque poetry scene of 2 decades ago, approximately 2002, 2007, and looks at, first of all, a place where a lot of it happened, the Winnings Coffee, right across from the university, and the magazine Central Avenue that sort of chronicled that period, and it includes quite a few poets who were in that journal and shows their work from that time next to new work. So it's really, I think, a terrific way of showing the continuity of the Albuquerque scene. And I've lived in a lot of different places, and Albuquerque is certainly one of my favorite poetry communities, and continues to be. So I just wanted to kind of open the floor to Dale and Merimee and Jules, if she has questions about about what inspired you to do this book. And yeah. So
Dale, you want to take the first shot at that?
Yes, thanks. I'm laughing because it's a cautionary tale in don't take on cleaning out your spare room. I was with good intentions. A couple of years ago, I was trying to go through all my boxes and plastic bins of memorabilia, and I never got farther than reading the old issues of Central Avenue. And most of that room is still very, very cluttered. So I thought, gee, these were good poems, even better than I remember. Uh, Central Avenue began with some backyard readings in the North Valley at Kathy McCracken's place. Many of you will remember Kathy as a very dynamic poet, and we had a lot of fun with monthly gatherings, and having campfires and maybe some beverages here and there. And it was Kathy's idea to begin some poetry chapbooks collected from these gatherings. That manifested as Willow Street. Bob Reeves, who publishes as Robert Arthur Reads, did the formatting. We took these really clumsily, literally cut and pasted chapbooks to Kinko's, and they were not state of the art, believe me. That evolved into the idea to have monthly poetry readings and monthly chapbooks in the Nob Hill area. The illustration on the front cover, thank you, Esther Fesky, for the drawing, shows winning coffee. And it was on Harvard, right across from the university. And boy, did we have a colorful mix of characters and students. And it's a lively part of town still. Kathy turned the project over to me at a certain point, although every month I begged a poem out of her. And after 5 years of this, Bob Reeves, I think, had enough of the project and was getting busier with his own publishing. And it was time to pass it along. It was Billy Brown has took up the mantle, and for 15 years now has done the Fixed and Free series. So there I was with this whole box of old Central Avenue issues, and I talked to Merimee about, could we do something? And she had a brilliant idea of trying to contact as many of the original poets, and there were a lot of them, and asking them if they would submit a new poem and we would pair it with one of the old ones. It was really an exciting process to come up with the what resulted. Merimee, you want to say a couple words? More than a couple?
Well, okay. Yeah, I do remember running into you at Mary Oishi's launch of One Albuquerque, and you said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this book. Would you like to help me?" And then I said yes, because it's the middle of the pandemic, or there sort of, and it's like, yeah, let's do something. And going back to Central Ave, when it ended, you sort of put it up on a platter and offered it to the community. And Billy Brown wanted it, and I wanted it. I didn't want to see it fall flat because there were too many people that depended on you, your venue and your chapbooks. And so Billy and I, and one other person, I can't remember who it was, only Billy might be able to remember. I think it was another woman, but I don't remember. We met at Billy's house because Dale had said she was done with Central Avenue. And I thought, okay, I'm going to tell Billy what I think. And we bantered about a little bit. And then I realized, okay, Billy, you got it. Go for it. And I think I worked with him for about 3 weeks. I found the name, Fixed and Free Bicycle. Right there in Nob Hill, was in the parking lot where Ihajab Bakery is now, right behind Flying Star. And Fixed and Free Bicycle owner, Sam Pfeiffer, was a friend of mine. And he had an extra room. That was our first venue with Billy's open mic, and which came directly out of Central Avenue. We just sort of gathered all those names and and those rooms were full, and it continued on,
Mm.
and it's still ongoing.
Yeah.
So
And
Sam
has a journal now. Yeah. Mhm.
and Sam, I don't know, we stopped using that place and went to the source. We stayed there for a long time.
Mhm.
And one other thing, I didn't get to meet with you guys at Kathy's house, but I knew Kathy McCracken from Taos. And I was in her garden and in that beautiful yard. And I don't know where she read where the poem came from, but did you read the copy of Outhouse that I sent you, Dale?
No, I did not.
Oh, all right. Well, there, one chalk went up for me because I missed so much of your stuff. But I have it with me, and I think it's family friendly enough if you consider talking about an outhouse. So if there's time at the end, I will read that poem.
Terrific. Yeah. Terrific.
Great.
It's an unpublished poem. I looked in your archives list, and she had not published it in Central Avenue.
Yeah, I also will put up on the chat. There's a website that has all of the issues of Central
Right.
Avenue.
This is an
Wonderful.
issues.
Good.
This is an amazing thing. It's right inside the front cover or on the first page. That website, Dale scanned every page of all
Wow.
the 60
Herculean. Yeah. That's
It
quite
was, I couldn't believe she was doing that. And
Mhm.
there's no way I could help her, nor did I want to, but I
That's-
lauded her for
that's
doing
a-
that. And
such a treasure. Yeah.
yeah, it's there. And there's so many amazing poems from all of these people where you see
Yeah.
one or two in the book, but they're there. She's preserved them
Yeah.
on the internets.
Wonderful.
And
Dale, do you have any copies of Willow Street or Central Ave that you could hold up?
No, I would have to go into that dreaded room.
Okay.
I'd have to go
Okay.
down in my basement.
I was just, I taught a workshop last spring about the Mimeo Revolution and all the little zines that popped up around the country in the 60s, 70s, and later. And there's something interesting, I think. I mean, there's something joyous about the fleeting nature of those kinds of magazines that make them in some ways more valuable than something like a poetry magazine that's been around forever, so
yeah, they're precious. A lot of them were happening all over the scene. I mean, the slammers were making their little chapbooks, and I made five of them. I don't know. Other people made them. So the venue attracted, like Dale said, everybody and their baby and their grandmother in between and all which ways. It was a wonderful venue. That place was packed. There was standing room only many times for people to just drop in and go to the mic. And Dale was so gracious and uncensoring. She never censored me, and that's how I slipped through the cracks.
Yeah, unfortunately, Jules and I didn't get here till 2011, so we missed all that. We, of course, took part in Fixed and Free, and also in the East of Edith series, which Reyes and Lisa Gill had north of downtown, and but I wish we'd, and I also, of course, there were still some open mics at Winning Coffee for a while, and for a few years anyway.
And there was Blue Dragon.
Yeah.
Which anyway.
Yeah.
But Dale was the most persistent with these. She had the most organized chapbook system going. Everybody else would do one personally and sell them for $5 or give them away. And it was fun. I have several of them on my bookshelf.
We should probably get to the poets, I think.
Indeed.
So I will turn things over to MackerMerimée, I guess, who's going to do
well, our first poet, Mary Oishi. I think I first met Mary Oishi at a gathering that happened several times called Poets Against War. That was Elaine Schwartz organizing that. That's when I first really heard Mary. I may have met her or seen her, but I really heard her and have been impressed ever since. So here's her little mini bio. Mary Oishi, Albuquerque Poet Laureate Emerita, is the author of Sidewalk Cruise Ship, published this year by UNM Press, co-author of Rock, Paper, Scissors, author of Spirit Birds They Told Me. She is also the editor of One Albuquerque, 100 Poets, Poets in the Libraries, anthology, which I think was first place a year ago in anthologies. Congratulations on that. She is a two-time finalist and a 2023 winner of the New Mexico-Arizona Book Award. She served as instructor for the Taos Writers Conference and the University of New Mexico, and as poetry mentor for Kundiman, an Asian American writers organization. She is published in the US and internationally, including in translation.
Thank you, Merimee, and thank you, Jules and John, for hosting this reading tonight. I'll read the two that were reprinted in this anthology from 2006. The first one is called It Was a Time for Flying, a Time for Birds. And I used one of the lines for this for my 2011 collection, Spirit Birds They Told Me. It was a time for flying, a time for birds. A raven whisked me off from San Francisco. A raven greeted me in Tokyo. A flock were waiting in the trees of Nara, each one a mystic shade of black. Back at the base of the sacred mountain, a single swallow binked his beak into the window near my bed. Bink, 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 repeatedly calling me into the dawn dreams of Japan at 5 a.m. Softer than a mother's heartbeat, consistent like taiko. Bink, 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 bink. Wake up to ancestral memory. Wake up to the history you were never told. Welcome to it. Another cultural reality so different from our own, so long survived, so civilized. Yet they too know so much pain. Many still go out the old way with honor, out of courage, or just being overwhelmed with the weight of life. But those birds, those spirit birds, they told me some things I never would have known without them. I never would have known how hearts can follow each other across oceans and mountains and hurts of the past, how we can fly and soar so many different ways, how all our varied songs come from the same place of longing, how there's so much beauty, even in the saddest call. And the other one, which was from April of 2006, which this has never been published anywhere else, actually. The reason for poetry: I do not wish to use my boots to trample death, nor my words to glorify. A young woman at the poetry reading tonight believes the man who said the reason for poetry is death. I'd like to take her to a nearby canyon where waxy yellow and fuchsia flowers spring from the cacti. See if she can find a poem there. Or to the maternity ward to watch a mother breastfeed her baby for the first time. See if that mother's eyes may hold 1,000 poems, perhaps tired, but far removed from death. I'd like to show that woman two lovers in the midst of war, but lovers nonetheless. Let her hear the poems in their moans, beating on their backs like sweat. I'd like to take her gently by the hand and say, don't take on everything the men say as truth for you, even if they're poets. Trust your womb, your second heart. See if it does not tell you The reason for a woman's poetry is life.
Whoa. Whee! Oh, thank you. That poem has been set free from history into the now. Thank you, Mary. And so now we have, and Mary may have to leave early because of her doggy. But next we have Jan Baca. Jan is originally from the East Coast. It's a big place. Jan Baca has lived in Albuquerque for over 25 years with her husband. She is the membership chair of the New Mexico State Poetry Society and holds a master's degree in elementary education and a bachelor's in creative writing. Jan's poems and short stories have appeared in the Santa Fe Reporter, the Albuquerque Alibi, Earthships, A New Mecca, and most recently, Central Avenue, Then and Now, and the award-winning New Mexico anthology, Glissando. Okay. And there's more just in her bio in the book that is interesting about her relationship with Central Ave. Nice to see you here, Jan.
It's nice to be here. Thank you. Thanks for hearing me. I'll be reading 3 poems, and the first one is an older one from the April 2006 issue, which I actually have a copy of. So this is what, if no one has seen them, this is what the little Central Avenue books look like. This was written after a friend invited me to the pilgrimage at Chimayo. Healing. We talk the words of feet walking on the way to Chimayo. Measured notes from friendly lips fall, slap on baking black. Searing up and up, words fly like desert birds, illusions for the sky. As 3 girls walk to Chimayo and into silence, mile 5, I have put a pebble in my shoe. Not for God, not for shame, but for pain, because it is more real than healing words or dirt. The second poem is one of the newer poems that are in this anthology, and this was born out of a late night anxiety spiral that I had when I was in the hospital, and I was asked if I had an advanced healthcare plan, and I didn't, and I still don't. But this poem came from that. Advanced healthcare planning. When you realize no one you know would help you pull the plug, it's time to make new friends, find a new lover, toughen up your mother in advance of your eventual demise. Because who wants to die a blank eye affixed on some shit brown water-stained ceiling tile, while friends and family come and go, ask for ice water, remote controls, where to plug in their phones, maybe throw an extra blanket on your inert sack of bones. Gently pat the sallow skin of your hand that's done holding, of your hand that won't ever be a hand again, really, because let's face it, a hand is a hand out of form, yes, but function too. And this hand of yours has checked out, has left the building, just lies there like a lump, like the rest of you, while your eyes stares and someone in your room laughs and shares a meme. And wouldn't true love mean making the hardest choice? And then this last poem is also a newer one, and this one is in a lighter voice than my regular voice. It's a little nostalgic and celebratory. Ugly our first cars, but charmed. Ugly our first cars, but charmed. Mythical creatures that ran on electric youth juice and the eternal ether of nascent dreams. Magnificent old beaters with bad transmissions, with doors that stuck shut permanently, with ceiling liners billowing down around our heads. We drove those sweet beasts into the unnamed countryside. We drove up frantic midnight mountains, hearts pounding and fingers thumping through hysterical fogs, and back home before sunrise. We drove down seaside highways, under cherry sweet skies to the fiercely foaming music of our tides. These cars carried impossible burdens, revolutions and illicit love potions cooked up in all-night diners at 3 a.m. the skinny dipped tinge of off-limits glee, the fresh-cut green of trespass, hundreds of penciled promises, millions of words of all kinds, whispered, screamed, sung, dreamed, spoken in confidence, moaned in ecstasy, with the gear shift crammed against someone's backside, and always the thrill of being caught. Slipping, scraping, careening through the desert wilds, these cars carried us. And we arrived. Snow-packed, we arrived. Rusted out, we arrived. Running on fumes, we arrived. Smoking, burnt on fire, we arrived. We arrived in shambles, yet impeccable. We arrived in great, garrulous groups. Early, late, but always on time. We arrived after countless intrepid miles at little rooms in the world that brimmed with immense and starry light. Our young hearts, our young minds, while outside, our beastly, constant steeds, refueled in the moonlight, waiting. Thank you.
Please unmute, Merimee.
Okay. Thank you, Jan. That was wonderful. I love that poem. And I like the other ones, but that one just gets at my heart, puts me way back there. Those big old cars with the headliners falling down. Wonderful. Okay. Next, we have my old pal, Karen Bradbury, who up and moved to Texas. Karen Bradbury is a retired English and Spanish teacher who loves the challenge of expressing herself through traditional and poetry forms and creating poetry shrines, assemblages, which embody her poems. She says she first began writing poetry while attending the Central Avenue readings. Karen co-published a monthly poetry broadside with Moi, The Rag, in Albuquerque for 5 years. And she won the 5th annual Writer's Digest Poetry Award for her villanelle, Javelina. She now enjoys plein air watercolor painting as much as writing. So she's going to kick that bucket back up out of the dust. In 2021, she moved from the northern New Mexico village of Los Ojos to Comanche, Texas, with her husband, mule, and donkeys. Karen, take it away, Karen.
All right. Thank you, Merimee. And just so credit goes where credit is due, 4 of those years of co-publishing The Rag was with Merimee. We worked a lot together.
Side by side.
Side by side.
It was fun.
Moving from the cut and paste with paper and scissors to the computer. Okay, I'm going to start with the then poem from May 2007. Fertility. The sex is fun at first. Maybe something will happen, but nothing does. The months fly by. Months I do not have, age 40. Daily temperature taking comes next, seeking that precious moment. Egg descending at just the right angle, sperm missile locked on target. Sex becomes sporadic, as if we've become Catholic. Sex for reproductive purposes only. Recreation relegated to frivolous pasts. Still, nothing happens. Treatments accelerate. Cysts dissolve. Tubes fuse. Action plans form. Making love is removed from the equation. This project depends on in vitro fertilization. Weekly visits to the specialist began. Daily injections, a source of secret pleasure as the tedium of treatments drags on, with only my doubts growing. At last, the moment is imminent. Sunday morning, they'll harvest my eggs, milk my husband's sperm, attempt alchemy in a dish. 2 days later, zygotes are multiplying, ready for reinsertion. Will one of them survive? I hold my breath that whole week until the blood test tells us. And then I wonder, should I do it again?
Bravo.
No. And then I'm going to read the two newer ones. This first one is a haiku sonnet from the first time during the beginning months of the pandemic when we were allowed to leave New Mexico. And I actually ventured into Colorado to meet a poet friend and stay with her for a couple of days. And it was so exciting. Fall haiku sonnet. Colorado Drive. Eager to visit a friend, I take homemade food. Fruits of the summer, yellow calabacitas, orange gazpacho. We eat together, celebrate autumn colors inside us, inside and out. Wander high meadows, aspen groves shimmering blaze, hug huge mother trees. Heartened women wide awake, chant by the full harvest moon.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Are you reading another
No, I'm going to read one more.
one? Okay.
This last one I wrote up at Ghost Ranch in Joan Love's workshop a couple of years ago. It's after Judith Hills from Red Bank, Coast to Coast. I was formed by the smell of jet fuel, snap and crackle of my father's flight suit, sonic booms and contrails filling the sky. I was formed by moving vans in new schools, packing up and moving on, fitting in or not, by pleasing teachers, so much more predictable than students. I was formed by little sisters and baby brother, our small world in a constantly changing universe, racing each other to the foot of the bed, under the covers, lying about who farted. I was formed by cold waters of Narragansett Bay, steaming summers of Jacksonville and Virginia, by kayaking on the Potomac River and smoking pot on Coronado Beach. I was formed by Tex-Mex tacos as a special treat, banana pudding and lime jello with fruit cocktail, by frozen fish sticks and chicken pot pies on Friday nights. I was formed by yes, sir, no, ma'am, thank you, please pass the butter, by admiration for precise vocabulary and disdain for bad grammar. I was formed by Southern hospitality and military pride, taught to shine and polish my secrets and lies. I was formed and I survived. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you. Let's see, am I muted now or what? No. No?
You're unmuted, Merimee.
Okay. I'll get the hang of this. I just never done it before. Okay, next poet. Yeah, I have a job. I forgot that. Okay, thank you, Karen. We have Lou Liberty. And I don't have any personal anecdotes, unfortunately, but maybe I will someday. Lou Liberty is an award-winning poet, author, and musician who practices writing and taiko drumming in Los Ranchos, New Mexico. She's been a featured poet in many diverse venues, including the Poetry Wall at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, Bark Magazine, and the Malpais Review Poetry Journal. She's often been selected for spoken word programs, including in-person, radio, podcast, and video presentations. She initiated the Renga Project in 2005 and collaborates with poets around the world through email. Thank you, Lou. Take it away.
Well, first I want to say I'm really delighted to be back among you. I haven't seen a lot of you in years, and many of you probably wondered what happened to me. I was on the road for almost 25 years performing and instructing taiko. I never stopped writing, however, and I have great memories of Central Avenue and all those early years of spoken word. Tonight I'm reading 3 poems. Pilgrim's Path is the first one. Autumn winds have come and gone. Frost is on the ground. still beautiful against the milk blue sky. A few leaves clinging to the top branches are brown now. Their golden glory departed. Sandhill cranes hasten southward, calling an ancient purr of celebration as they travel their aerial pilgrim's path to a winter's destination. I watch and witness their spiraling climbing a thermal, giving lift to graceful, improbable flight. I can't help but wonder, whither my winter haven, the course of my pilgrim's path. The second poem that was published in Central Avenue, which was a wonderful time, is What Einstein Didn't Know. Napping, cats dream the universe. Randomly they awaken, test gravity, maintain stability. And the last poem tonight is the one that is the final poem in my latest book, which Bill Nevins kindly wrote a blurb for. The Gift. Whatever we are given to love, let us love fully, completely, without restraint. This moment is impermanence, wrapped in transition. This love will not come again. To miss it diminishes both the lover and the beloved, a loss irredeemable. Thank you so much. It's a delight to be here tonight.
Wonderful love poem. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lou. Let's see, my list says next up is John Macker, also known as the Bob Dylan of Santa Fe poets. Sorry, John, nobody wrote that in there. Okay, John, anecdotes. I don't have too many, but I have some writing here from you. Poet, playwright, and essayist John Macker has lived in northern New Mexico for 28 years. His most recent books of poetry are Belated Mornings, Atlas of Wolves, The Blues Drink Your Dreams Away, Selected Poems 1983 through 2018, a 2019 New Mexico Arizona Book Awards finalist. El Rialto, a memoir, I haven't read that yet, and Desert Threnody, Essays in Short Fiction, a 2021 New Mexico Arizona Book Award winner for fiction anthology. For several years, he was a contributor to the Malpais Review. His trilogy of one-act plays, Black Range Trilogy, was produced by Teatro Paraguas in Santa Fe in 2023. He has recently been nominated for a Pushcart Prize. Okay, John, nice to see you here tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thanks to all of you, Merimee and Dale, for putting the book together. It's a great anthology.
Thank
and
you.
of course, John and Jules for hosting this. And I've always felt the Albuquerque poetry community was kind of my home away from home. I've always had wonderful relationships with people down there and always had a good time. And Jules and John's refuge there in Placitas is wonderful. I'll read the three poems in the anthology. Start out with a poem called Tombstone Blues. It's about an unknown Apache chief by the name of Ho, and it was spelled J-U-H. He's not as famous as like Cochise and Geronimo, but he was an effective leader. And this was published in July 2007 issue. Chief Ho rolls a cigarette with one hand, captures the moon in a playa of rain with the other blows smoke to the four directions. Peyote courses through the warm springs of his blood, and he tires of the sorties, endless in outlaw land. Early Gaian calls his people Inde, the dead. Now Everywhere he rides astride the border, the north-facing slope of his heart faces the Black Range. In the good days, he shared these mesas of intoxicating light with his segundo, Geronimo, shared the language of Sonora written on the exoskeletal plain in border Apache. On these nightliest of nights, a cursive of smoke leaves his mouth as an owl's shadow. He watches the windy, bosky cottonwoods of his youth fling rain, become dream trees, was told to say his prayers, rarely took a scalp. The old voices are as evanescent as moonshine, angelic, terminal, echoic, bloody, aching, and effervescence rises from the desert, corrupts and scatters the last of these bleach-boned sunsets. This is called Happiness. It's an ironic title. It's got a line in it by a poet I really like named Thomas Santalella. And it's about a little girl that was in the news several years ago who died on the border in the winter, crossing the border. I found Thomas Santalella's book in a thrift store, and his poem about happiness made me briefly, and without having to look over my shoulder, happy. It is 19 degrees out, but it's okay, there's a breeze. A ragged couple next to the savers in the cold rifle through a shopping cart of cast-off dirty clothes. A young girl in ICE custody dies of dehydration. Her temperature was 106 degrees. It is warm on the border for December, signifying nothing. The desert belongs as much to the supernal as it does its own tracks seeking water, as a polar bear loping across vanishing sea ice belongs to Aurora Borealis. She didn't need happiness to be mille fleurs or even contagious. She didn't need happiness to reinvigorate her sense of being. She needed the smile of a clean glass of water and a meal. She needed to belong to us, was made of us. We wear the same uninhabited cast-offs in the cold. Yes, she belongs to us, and the ground is bitter and replete with those we've cast off, but we'll never touch such spirit within such easy reach again. What little happiness remained in her clenched fist was released to become a red-tailed hawk, turning resistance into ecstasy. And the last, that was a newer poem. This last one is called Death of El Chapultepec Bar. And it's a true story about a great bar in Denver that closed during the pandemic. And I quote Richard Hugo. He says, "Nothing dies as slowly as a scene." It's not as if famous old jazz legends, captivated by the small stage and rainbow clientele, suddenly and with a whoosh, decamped like songbirds to the bare fruit trees. Not quite the village vanguard. There's no place anymore for time's dystopian momentum to stop and take a breather, not even for a jazz bar's weakening pulse. In Mexico City, on a hill in the Bosque del Apache, there are the remains of a Toltec altar. Not one jazz musician was sacrificed. Well, I take a few discordant notes. Denver must weep rivers for her abandoned places. Drunken last call baseball fanatics and encroaching urban modernity were reasons, but the pandemic was its coup de grace. We used to drop in for a couple of late night Heinekens and listen to the visiting left coast jazz. Throughout the years, Marcellus, Basie, and Kerouac. Throughout the years, its neon cantina sign flirted with the masked gods of immortality. Give memory a wide berth and it has a soundtrack. The cityscape burrowed into the deep night sky that reached around us like some blue universe, like Pithecanthropus erectus, like Wednesday night prayer meeting, like something otherworldly or redeemed from pure spirit. They say a homeless man used to stand by the railroad tracks lower downtown, cup his hands over his ears and yell, "The silence is deafening." It's not as if nature heralded its demise with a kettle of turkey buzzards circling over the carcass. Every day we try to tidy our exiled lives, keep our highways clean, try to stay away from the corner of Dead End and 20th Street. I'm getting the signal. It's last call. Too much circumspection and not enough improvisation. I dream of finishing my last set with a flourish. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Beautiful. Beautiful work. Okay.
All right.
Glad we have that
How you doing?
on camera. Okay. Next up, we have Bill Nevins. With an anecdote about Bill that we met somehow when we were both high school teachers who had slam teams. Bill was in Rio Rancho doing the, am I muted? Do I need to?
You're good. You're good, Merimee.
Okay. Bill needs to unmute. He's
Yeah.
good now. Okay.
he's good.
Bill was busy doing making good trouble in Rio Rancho, and I was in another high school, and that was the beginning of the teenage slam scene here. Thank you, Bill. Bill Nevins is a poet, a songwriter, a journalist, and a retired UNM educator who has worked in various media, including film and video. Bill grew up in the Northeast US, and he has lived in New Mexico since 1996. Bill's a member of the National Writers Union, the Irish American Writers and Artists, and La Raza Unida. He publishes both prose and verse in the Enchanted Circle News, Fixed and Free Quarterly, The Paper, Green Left, and Trend of Santa Fe. Bill's book, Light Bending, will be published in early 2025 by Sligo Creek Publishing. Good to hear that, Bill. Take it away now. He's muted.
Oh, Bill, you are muted. Okay. There you go.
There we go. Hey, thanks, Merimee. And yeah, for those times of teenage kicks that we shared back in Rio Rancho. I also remember working with you at CNM, which was great, and UNM, I think. Central Avenue. Honestly, I had not spoken poetry publicly in at least 25 or 30 years before I stumbled into Central Avenue and also the slam scene here. But, it was all like a revival for me. So thanks so much. I mean, it changed my life and was so welcoming. It's a wonderful place. I've got one, let's see, I've got two poems here, but I've got one poem that was printed in the March 2007 issue of Central Avenue. And I hadn't seen this poem in a long time, and I was somewhat shocked by how candid it is. Some of poets tend to, mask our actual lives in metaphor and surrealism. At least I do. But this one, it's straight out autobiography. It starts and circles around to the story of my Nana, my great-grandmother, and it takes its title from her. But it goes other places. Some of it may seem arcane. I would recommend, if you do have Hulu TV, take a look at a TV series, one that's on there right now, called Say Nothing. Okay, or you can read Seamus Heaney's great poem, Whatever You Say Nothing. And that has to do with some of this. Okay, here we go. Anna Kiley came out from a family of 9 on a farm in Karen County Tip, somewhere at the end of the 1800s. She lived a century wearing her good farm wives' dresses and singing her great-grandson, Molly Malone. A detective sergeant's mother-in-law, she often took the bus from Stamford to Bridgeport to visit relations with never a fear. We lived in one of those fine old two-story houses next door to the Ukrainian cemetery enclave, St. Basil's, and I ran free and wild as a child. I would fly upstairs in my Superman cape for tea and cookies with Anna and her daughter, even when I'd knocked over my mom's best vase, for no anger, however righteous, could touch me sitting at the checkered kitchen table, the fine afternoon lights slanting through the curtain lace, singing cockles and mussels, alive, alive, oh. Anna died in a fire, and no one could save her. Just as I began my teenage years, her farm wife's sleeve caught an open flame as she tried to make tea one last day alone. The wake was a grand event, they all say. I only cried for 40 years or so. Wandering many's the street, broad and narrow, this wide world o'er. Delaney roared whiskey-driven New York City nights with me, settling his own haunted dreams with girls, song, and rebel disregard of the church or Catholic fear. Ah, Billy, look right into her eyes, man. She wants you to see how pretty she is. And his sly hand and smile more often than not found a way between gently coaxed thighs. All Ireland did arise, and we danced down Manhattan streets of fire and rain, laughing off our pain and singing songs of Ireland in the bells of hell, while Malachi held joyful court and the ballad of Bernadette Devlin wafted from the juke. The bogside exploded, and I hit Dublin just as the Brits were dragon folk from their Belfast and Derry hovels to prison ships and the Republican University campuses. You know the long story, the war and the glory, Paisley's vicious bluster and the women of Armagh, volunteers cut down in Ulster or on Gibraltar, mother of sweet Jesus weeping as in a New York City cell on a street that Mayor Dinkins named after him, Joe Doherty, the barber for wise guys, had kept the flame lit, or dear Roisin hauled off pregnant to a London hell, or McGlinchey, man and wife riddled, or Scatter O'Hara in a lousy Dublin jail, or all the morning, or all the peace doves in the new morning, at last, but down all those years, the anger and the tears, I always heard the wheels of her ghost-rolled barrow bringing me home to Tipperary quiet nights, ajar in the pub, and sing-song till the dawn. And the other poem, which is shorter, I guess it was written more recently, it's called Mercy Commando Grace. Patience held in Baghdad despite his fierce heart. That sergeant told me his soft story of how a U.S. Ranger sniper held an Iraqi man in his sight, dead to kill, and had the right, but held fire at his spotter's word just long enough to know that that man, though armed, was just some man inspecting his back plot that night, and likely was a lover, perhaps a father himself, who did not need to die. That same Sarge was in love with a good woman here in the peaceful USA when Haqqani snipers working their fierce jobs for Iran killed him one Paktia province day. He died in love, some say. She lives on with his memory tucked away. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for all of that. So, yeah. There's some more in your bio in the book if people want to know a little bit more about your history. I won't go backwards at this point, but thank you. Next up, we have Kate Padilla, who originally, I think, hails from Wyoming.
I was born in New Mexico and
Went to
grew up in
Wyoming,
Wyoming and returned back to New Mexico.
came back. Yeah, okay, well, good.
Yes, it is
You
good.
wrote a poem years ago that burned in my brain, the picture of Kate as a teenager with a teenage girl on each side, their arms linked, taking the whole sidewalk as they walked down the street in Wyoming. And I thought, if I were on the other side of that facing me, I would be nervous. Okay. Kate Padilla's book of poems, Apples Rot on the Ground, which is a lot about her childhood in Wyoming, was recently published by Finishing Line Press. Her poem, Vanishing History, published by Dos Gatos Press, was a pushcart nominee. In retirement, she and her husband continued their international travels. While at home in Albuquerque, she spends her time on poetry and art. Okay, take it away, Kate.
I'm in awe that Merimee and Dale could put this book together. I can't imagine all the work that was involved and the beautiful cover by Esther. Thank you very much for doing that kind of work and preserving the poems. And I just want to say hello to Lou Liberty, who, when I first arrived, she was my mentor. I wasn't involved in poetry, and I was sent, then I met all of this poetry community and Karen Bradbury, who pulled me along. And so thank you also very much. The one, I fell in love with the Sestina when I first started. And so one of the books, the poem that is included in the early Central Avenue is Pablo in Socorro, Sestina. Pablo loves gardening under the New Mexico sun that tans his lean Slavic body. He grows basil and sunflowers, a natural for a Balkan. A Slovenian Balkan, Pablo is temperate like his sunflowers. He takes to gardening like the body thrives under the sun. This August sun, colored by the monsoon, thrills this Balkan who sees the earth like his body. Pablo seen on bent knees, gardening. He yields grand tomatoes, basil, and sunflowers. The wind blew down the sunflowers, stretched 15 feet toward the sun, robbing light from the basil. This gardening needs a benevolent Balkan like Pablo, whose kindness enriches the body. His nearly naked, soiled, and sweaty body is a loin against the heat of his sunflowers. Every year, Pablo lines seeds with the sun, just like any Balkan who loves gardening. In the Socorro Desert, he is gardening. The soil begs for compost, just like the human body. Bricks and rocks are stacked by this Balkan for a throne to honor the sunflowers, like the Aztec temples reaching for the sun, a symbol for Pablo. Socorro summer wanes, rich with herbs, tomatoes, and sunflowers. Gardening ends, sadness fills the body of a Balkan who loves the sun. But with a smile, he makes pesto, another season to love Pablo. And like I said, I was born in New Mexico, but knew very little about my life. We moved to Wyoming when I was young, and I so wanted to know more about my life and my ancestors' life. And so I visited my aunt, who lived in Arroyo Seco. This poem is Vanishing History. My great-great-grandmother is buried in Arroyo Seco, as is my grandmother. My mother was birthed at this very same New Mexico village. I was born nearby in Taos. That's all I know. Aunt Bessie is 91, my last link to bygone days. I beg her for stories. We walk behind the family adobe home. She plucks plums off the trees planted ages ago. She complains bears eat her apples. I beg her for stories. She unbuttons her blouse. She asks me to touch her breast, the lump, a steely marble. She shows me her last 3 pots of porch geraniums. This is my last poem and more of a newer poem. The quandary I live in. Didn't I teach you not to waste food? I look out my window over Central Avenue, food from nearby food bank, pitched over sidewalk, bottles, clothes, trash of all sorts scattered. Didn't I teach you to pick up after yourself? Outside my window, she hikes up her skirt, leans against the wall, and urinates. Didn't I teach you not to piss outside? From my window, I see her torch a bush, lean, flames rise high on a windy day. Firemen put out the flames as she eats her meal cooked on city's landscape. We hear this and we hear that, and I am sad. A historic house was burned down, arson. A person dead at the park left unnoticed. Out my window, we wonder who is normal. Out my window, we wonder who is not normal. Outside my door, he sprawled, tinfoil between his legs, a makeshift weapon in his hands. He is dazed. He is the same man ringing my doorbell night and day for a year. Didn't I tell you trespassing was a crime? Didn't I teach you that drugs could kill you? What I taught my children is no more. What I learned as a child is no more. What is the price of compassion? Like outside my door is no longer safe. The outdoors is no longer mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Beautiful work. Okie dokie. Do we have a Don McIver here? He's up next.
Yes, he's here. I'm finding him.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. Up next is Don McIver, who I've known since he was a teenager, I think.
No.
No, not that long. Very
No.
long.
Yeah.
Very long. And what can I say? I know you encouraged me once to keep coming to those readings at Central Avenue. You said because I had the surprise factor. I looked like a nice little old lady with white hair, but when the stuff came out of my mouth, there was surprise. I always remembered you saying that to me. Don McIver was an early participant and coach for slam poetry competitions, both locally and nationally. He is widely published and has produced many poetry events and performed in ensembles and solo shows. Don currently hosts KUNM Radio Afternoon Freedom and MCs Thirsty Ear readings at Thirsty Eye Brewing Company. Is that correct? Okay. Take it away, Don.
Hi, everybody. So good to see and hear all of you.
Don, can you turn your camera
How
on?
are you?
Oh, is it not on?
No, we can't see you yet. Your face is not in the library. There
Oh,
you
just getting your all we see is your virtual background.
Oh, wait. Yeah.
Turn
Okay,
your-
here we go.
Turn your camera on.
How's that?
No, we just see your screen.
Okay, hold on. Okay, how's that?
There you go.
All right.
Better.
All right.
So I'm going to start by reading the poem April 2006, Noisy Pen.
Oh, Don, can you just turn the camera just down a little? Your chin is getting cut off. That's
There
better.
it is. Okay.
Now we see your room.
Okay. Noisy Pen. Just when I thought I was going to have enough light to write by, the full moon goes behind a cloud only to re-emerge as I near the end of this page. Darkness, light moving through an empty field near Grant's, the solitude, the silence, the loudest sound is my hand moving across this page. I had no idea writing was so noisy. Yet I don't really need to see to write. Don't really need to hear to write. I just need to live. And lately I feel as if I haven't lived enough. And this is a more recent one, a Gazelle called The Home Run. Caressed by fingers that learn a routine leather baseball with its odd stitch, is it gently held up to face ball. Rising four seam or two seam, he paints it black over the plate and almost too fast to pace ball. The closer throws some heat. The throw moves straight, doesn't bob or weave. This is an all forward, no grace ball. If I read it right, I'll hit it with a solid whack. And since I'm the fireman, I'll send it into space ball. Landing foul beyond the fence, the wary fans try their fate, looking for it before it disappears without a trace ball. My father cheers me on, and from behind my back, quit swinging so fast. This is baseball, not race ball. I move my back foot closer to the plate. He throws wide, hoping I will swing at his chase ball. I watch him wind up, watch where his eyes will track as he releases, my heart thumping like an upright baseball. Thinking, come on, your pitch is just coming, just wait. He moves in fluid motion. I swing my bat as if it is a lace ball. The bat connects, a loud and insistent crack. Don, you shout. Now this is baseball. And rather than me read my third poem, I thought since he's no longer with us, I would read a poem by Gary Brower. It's in the anthology called El Calibre, the Hummingbird. The Aztecs believed hummingbirds were souls of dead warriors returned to earth because of their existence at the edge of flowers. Even though there is competition among males vying for mates, even though their shiny heads are like tiny helmets, it is difficult to associate them with war. Today, outside my window among summer blossoms, I see a dark-headed hummingbird darting for nectar like an Aztec warrior on the battlefield, rushing from one hand-to-hand combat to another, living on adrenaline, the heart floating inside the chest, looking for the nectar of blood. In the Aztec wars of the flowers, Huaxiotl, they did not kill enemy soldiers, took prisoners for later sacrifice, their hearts cut out alive, pulled out, still beating, still beating, still beating, like the rhythm of hovering wings of the colibre, held up by blood-spattered priests, an offering to the gods to stop the world from ending, to keep the sun in the sky. After each war, the Aztec capital was overrun by hummingbirds, like hovering hearts, linked to the beauty of flowers, the dark blossom of death, which was the constant religion then, it's the constant religion now. Gary O'Brow. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks for reading that from Gary. Thanks for your poems.
I just wanted to thank Don for the Gary Brower poem. And Gary, who was taught at UNM for many years and was the editor of the Malpais Review, was, a very important figure in both the Albuquerque and the Placitas poetry communities. So, yeah, back to you, Merimee. Or
Okay.
actually, you guys should read some poems, Merimee and Dale.
Let me see if I can pull up. Let me go ahead. Let's see. Hold on a second. This is obnoxious, but I should be able to go right to Kathy McCracken's poem. I would like to read Kathy McCracken's poem.
Merimee, you were going to read Outhouse, right?
I'm going to read Outhouse right now, if I can just get it big enough to see. There we go. So this poem came to me somehow from Kathy McCracken's hand. She handed it to me on a little scruffy piece of paper, and I put it up on the wall on a nail in my office. And I don't know that it's been published anywhere. And it's Kathy, who was introduced earlier as being a co-founder of Central Avenue and an inspiration to many, both for her gardening and for her poetry. Outhouse, and she lived in Arroyo Hondo, outside of Taos, which is where I first knew her in the 70s. Oops, come back. Oh, for God's sake. Okay, it's back. I have loved this little house, its homely function, the honesty of the whole, ashes dumped ceremoniously after even the ant that bit last year. Hollyhocks might frame it, surround, and sanitize, but we have trees planted. Already this spot anticipates Russian olives. The view is good. Low-flying sweep of marsh hawk announces fence posts and the clear purple shadows of dawn creep below an enormity of sky. At the fence line, pinon lumps cold against willow, but there is little wind. Body heat stays trapped in the shell. Once, as I sat, a great horned male announced silence in the unimaginable beauty. Some mornings, thought presents against clarity, with that same feathered burst in a huge plummet of startled wonder, and the mice scatter and burrow below as the voice of God sheathes the air in gold, a shaking either beneath understanding or beyond it. I can't tell you what happens when these mornings spirits precipitate dawn, but meadowlarks recreated Eden once as I sat here. And of course, you can always plant a tree when the hole is full and it's time to move on. That's Kathy McCracken. Okay. Dale, would you like to read something?
Sure. Thank you for reading Kathy's poem, Merimee, and thank you, Jules and John, for your generosity in giving us this time. In September 2004, I published this poem in Central Avenue, and it's a pantoum, and I like it better than any pantoum I've ever written, because I think I've only written this pantoum. It's titled If I Tell You About My Life. And there is an introduction. In Scandinavian lore, Ran, R-A-N, was the great sea goddess. Her 9 daughters, who were sometimes mermaids and sometimes waves, are called the Claws of Ran. If I tell you about my life, will you listen? Once I was young and loved the sea, water and wind, the sun a great indifferent beast. They ate away my days. Once I was young and loved the sea, a woman with daughters and no sons. They ate away my days. How beautifully those hours blazed. A woman with daughters and no sons. We walked mangrove beaches hunting crayfish. How beautifully those hours blazed. Bells of distant boats rang out indigo. We walked mangrove beaches hunting crayfish, coral and sea grape fanning out before us. Bells of distant boats rang out indigo. I sang them the love of mermen, the claws of ran. Coral and sea grape fanning out before us, water and wind, the sun a great indifferent beast. I sang them the love of mermen, the claws of ran. If I tell you about my life, will you listen?
Bravo, bravo. Yes.
Thank you, Dale.
Thank
Very
you all so much. It's so great to hear everyone.
Thank you. Merimée, were you going to read that outhouse poem?
I just
did.
did.
Oh, that was the one. Okay.
Sorry, I lost
Sorry.
it. Somebody texted me and it bumped it. And then
Oh,
I
okay.
got it back though.
Okay. So let's see. We have yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to wrap this up about the anthology before we start the open.
Yes. I just wanted to mention we have 3 people I think are still online with us who are in the anthology. Marilyn Stablein, Larry Goodell, and Shirley Blackwell. And I was wondering if they had their copies and would like to read a poem
From
from
the
anthology.
If they don't, I can.
Marilyn, do you?
That's spur of the moment. You don't have to. And just for the recording here, can you say again where to find this? I know it's on Amazon and I know it's at the local
Treasure House.
stores.
It's at Treasure House. It's supposed to also be at Organic Books, but it's still sitting in my house. So it's in my house too. I
Hopefully soon, yeah.
have 2 copies for sale, but I am bringing them down to Organic Books soon.
You can also go to hummingbirdhollowpress.com.
Oh, good. Okay.
And we have a link to the Amazon.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Do you have Marilyn Stablein's bio here in the book?
Marilyn, are you ready to read a poem from the book, or what are your thoughts?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, she's ready. So yeah, why don't you read her bio? Sure.
Okay. Marilyn Stablein. Hi, Marilyn.
Hi.
I've talked to you for years.
Yeah.
Portland, Oregon. Books published. Splitting Hard Ground Poems, La Alameda Press, 2011, won the New Mexico Book Award. Milepost 27 Poems, won Southwest Book of the Year, 2019. From Nepal, 2 books of prose poems about dreams, Night Travels to Tibet and More Night Travels to Tibet. New art books, Bind, Alter, Fold, a monograph of artist books, 2 collage books published in Ireland, and a Ukrainian book, Lino Cut, Artist Illustrated, The Rat Tavern. With husband Gary Wilkie, they moved to Albuquerque store, Asakia. They moved their Albuquerque store, Asakia Booksellers, to Anthology Booksellers in Portland, Oregon, online at asakiabooksellers.com and marilynstablein.com. So take it away, Marilyn.
Great. Well, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Dale and MackerMerimée, and for putting this wonderful anthology together. And Esther did a fine job of design and the beautiful cover. And thanks to John and Jules for hosting. And thanks to all of the poets that have been reading. It's really fun to be here and with you all and share this nice event launch of the anthology, the community. I'll read, maybe I'll read two, one old and one new. Transient is old. A backpack is my pillow, a borrowed blanket my bed. Road maps or talismans I pick up along the way. Always a bag on my shoulders. I've been gone so long, 1 year thrusts into another, like snowdrops in a winter thaw. I want to keep what is precious, discard the rest. Letters fill an absence, so familiar it haunts me like a birthmark. Brothers and a sister I never met visit in dreams. There's my first lover and his station wagon. Canvas paints and brushes fill the back seat. I wave from the curb. Hello, I'm back. He doesn't recognize me. I'm a transient in my hometown. Even my license plates are out of state. And newer one is called After the Law Changed. You mean I don't have to cower next to the open bathroom window of a 3-story walk-up with the exhaust fan on high anymore? You mean I don't have to steal a toke on the deck or in the garage or alley during lunch break? Hoard peppermint, breath mint, scented air fresheners, and incense sticks? You mean I don't have to hide the papers, pipe, roach clips, and stash in a Chinese lychee tea tin in a high cupboard, freezer bag, or leather pouch? You mean I don't have to pick twigs out of a matchbox full, sprout seeds in a cardboard egg carton, transplant seedlings between corn stalks or under a grow light and wait for months? No more drop it or freeze. No frisking, strip search, bust, or jail time. There are dispensaries, menus, high-grade strains, fixed prices, free samples, tinctures, candy, pot brownies to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you. Yeah, just stay out of Texas. Okay, it's Larry Goodell.
Okay, Larry, I know Shirley's ready. Is Larry, did you want to read something from the anthology?
Well, I'll wait for Shirley if you like.
Okay, I'll let you find
Okay,
something.
we'll go with Shirley first. And,
Shirley, yeah.
Merimée, can you read Shirley's bio?
Let me find, right, let's see. This should be alphabetized perfectly. Shirley Blackwell. Hello, Shirley.
Hi there, Merimée.
Hello. This Shirley hails from Los Lunas, New Mexico. She says, my first New Mexico published poem was in Central Avenue. My latest in New Mexico Poet Laureate Levi Romero's New Mexico Poetry Anthology, 2023. I have poems in about a dozen New Mexico and several national publications, and an essay in Fixed and Free Quarterly. 2 of my books were finalists in the prizes in the New Mexico Arizona Book Awards. I am co-founder of the Blackberry Peach, BBP, prizes for poetry, and the BBP National Youth Slam Mini Festival. I've served on New Mexico State Poetry Society and NFSPS. What is that?
National Federation of State Poetry Societies, our mothership.
Thank you. Okay, take it away, Shirley.
Okay, as I said in the bio, my first published poem after 30 years of not writing poetry and finally retiring and getting into it again was this one that I'm going to read. I have to say a heartfelt thank you to Dale Harris, who was my what would you call her? My fairy godmother of poetry. After all those years of not doing it, it was in 2006 that I went to the Sunflower Poetry Festival in Mountain Air and met uh, and met Dale for the very first time, and she was so comforting about my being able to get back in and read in public, which I had not done. And and also she said that I could probably find a place in Central Avenue. So I did, and at that time I was very much a formalist, still am kind of. And so anyway, both of the poems that I have here, they're short, but they're both very formal, and they're both about nature, things I wrote about then and now. So the first is called Hard Landing. From upper deck, I watched ducks congregate, some sensibly, some swam through reeds and sedge, others gathered in the boat ramp parking lot. Two drakes patrolled an ersatz puddle's edge, a dent in asphalt covered by scant rain. They dragged their bills to seine the shallow pond as if the inch-deep water hid some find. I smiled inside, but not so those I spied. They looked at landlocked me and laughed outright. Oh, some may claim that ducks say quack, 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 but on this day 'twas ha, 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 ha. You cannot sail the salt marsh with webbed feet, or ride the currents of sea air on feathered wings. Ha, ha, ha. Oh, poor, sad human being. A she-duck flew in, trying to join her kind, her angle steep. I winced to see her land, skidding on the asphalt masking pond. Oh, sister duck, I cannot laugh at thee for braving flight and landing in a muddle. I too have learned, when gazing from afar, how difficult to judge how deep the puddle. And the second one is a sonnet, Before You Go. Oh, lovely butterfly, transition sweet cliche, you've turned up in my poetry again. Crawled into a chrysalis, and now you'll wing away. Before you go, let's talk of where you've been. Let's start with the axiom that all of life is change, and so is growth and death, so I suppose. But while you were in hiding, did you rearrange your molecules because that's what you chose? And what about awareness in that time? If your essence changed, do you know when? Did wing-born brain snuff out your larval mind? Or do you know today what you felt then? The reason that I ask, if truth be told, is I sense change afoot and I grow old. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you. So did Larry?
And Larry's here. Mm-hmm.
Larry, we have a bio on you, I would guess. Let's look at it. I'm not ready for this. Let's see. Larry Goodell, Placitas, New Mexico. I've been exploring native flowering plants with Lenore Goodell, who is an expert photographer and plant identifier. And I published several books doing everything from the ground up as Duende Press. Aging seems to require more activity since time is running out, pretty sure.
Thank you. And this is such a hefty anthology and very carefully done. There's a lot of documentation in the back, and I really, really appreciate it. So I might as well read a couple poems that are here. Rebirth. And hello to friends here. Rebirth, well, this is 2006. The end of the world is the dumbing of America as the sleaze pits take over and screw everything good. Except there are mansions of neglect. The muse won't go near them. Everything positive in energy and the creative shirks their doors. So we prepare a giant compost pit and dump their stereotypical mansions into the sinkhole of their so-called paradise. The rich, the wealthy, hot shits. Down they go. A miracle has occurred. They're gone. There's a birth, the birth of you and me. Maybe we'll love each other like chimpanzees again. There's hope. We're bigger than them in laughter, in heart, in soul, in music, in art, in building the creative, in lifeblood, in the common, in common sense. Here we come. Make way for the innocent, the carolers of dance, the trapeze artists of the heart, the wealth of good humans, the peace artists, the negotiators of sunlight, the planters, gardeners, and worshippers of vegetation and spirits, animals and love, light and truth, 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 reality applauds again. Thanks. And this short one for Lenore. Happy birthday for Lenore. And I mentioned how I met Lenore, and we were introduced by this sculptor friend of ours named Peter Karasik. And in not only admiration, but in thanks for that, since we've been married well over 50 years since then, I just put together a book of Peter Karasik's little cartoon-like drawings, and I'm hoping to have it out in a month. Thank you, Peter. Happy birthday, Lenore. Love bites the tongue off complaints. There's a repartee with hope around the corner, and you don't even have to dance. When you're gone, long time seems longer. How did we meet? Artists. We were not bankers, or we would never have met. I thought your art was fantastic, groundbreaking, and you were intrigued by my different approach and more. However, and no matter what happened, we stayed together. And here we are, or would be, if you weren't out walking, and I worry when I'm not with you. Thank you.
Oh, that's lovely, Larry.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Larry.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. And thanks to all the readers from this anthology. Such a rich collection of poetry and so much history. So thank you, Dale and Merimee. I think we'll probably stop the recording, and
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And
Thank you,
just
John and
wonderful.
Jules.
We have